If you were worrying about the Jordan Love contract, it's time to stop.
You are Locked On Packers, your daily Green Bay Packers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Packers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Peter Bukowski, and I cover the Packers for The Leap, a newsletter I would love for you to subscribe to. Follow me on Twitter, Peter_Bukowski. Follow the podcast on Twitter, Locked On Packers. Like us on Facebook. Subscribe to the podcast, iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever you find podcasts, you will find Locked On Packers, the #1 Packers podcast on the internet. On the show for fans who know what happened, they want to know why and how. Thanks to everyone who makes Locked On Packers their first listen every day. We hope you like starting your day with us as much as we like starting our day with you. Brock Purdy got paid, ladies and gentlemen. He got paid a lot. Not as much as Jordan Love, but he got paid a lot. And in fact, by APY, not as much as Jordan Love, but he did get more future guaranteed money than Jordan Love. And I'm not going to relitigate the $55 million from Jordan Love. I was fine with it at the time. If you listen to this show or you read my writing at The Leap, you know that I was fine with it at the time. The reason I'm bringing this up now, after Brock Purdy got paid, is I just went to look. I wanted to look. How many quarterbacks have outperformed Jordan Love since he became the starter? And what I found, I've used this stat before, but among guys who played at least 700 plays over the last 2 years, so have you played most of the last 2 seasons? 6 quarterbacks by EPA per play have been better, more productive. I try and make this distinction because better and more productive are not always the same thing. In fact, over the last 2 years, Patrick Mahomes is the 10th most productive, most efficient quarterback in the league by EPA per play, but no one would argue he is the 10th best quarterback in the league. So, production. Brock Purdy is #1 over the last 2 years. Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, 2 and 3. Jared Goff is 4. Tua Tagovailoa is 5. Dak Prescott is 6. He's the highest paid player in the history of the world. Well, the history of football. Jordan Love is 7th in EPA per play. So 6 quarterbacks ahead of him. Of the top 12 quarterbacks the last 2 years in EPA per play, the only one who is not making at least $45 million is Baker Mayfield. And the only guy making 45 but not 50 is Patrick Mahomes. And he signed a preposterous contract that was stupid when he did it. He did it as a favor. I don't know. I still don't know why he signed it. It didn't make sense then. It doesn't make sense now. And I don't know why the Chiefs haven't given him a raise like the Bills just did for Josh Allen. The point I'm making here is teams pay for production, and objectively speaking, Jordan Love has produced. Now, we can make arguments, football-based arguments, about value and what is the value of a quarterback to his offense, one to the other. But the reality right now is the league pays for production. Jordan Love is worth the money he's being paid currently. And I would argue that he's more than $2 million in additional value annually than Tua Tagovailoa or Jared Goff or Brock Purdy. Those are the peers, and certainly more than Trevor Lawrence, who is his direct peer in terms of annual compensation. Trevor Lawrence isn't even close to this group. He's, by the way, Jordan Love is ahead of Joe Burrow, ahead of Justin Herbert, ahead of Patrick Mahomes, ahead of Jalen Hurts. Is he better than all those guys? Probably not, right? Probably not. But he is more productive and efficient. And that's ultimately what you want from your quarterback. It's not the only thing. Brock Purdy is not the best quarterback in the league. He is the most productive and efficient. Now, we've also seen Jimmy Garoppolo be highly productive and efficient in that offense. So the bar for productivity and efficiency in that 49ers offense with that group of skill players is like, in the sub basement It's like the old Chris Rock joke about the bar being so low for dads to just exist in the world. But this is just what the market is. And I've said that, I've said versions of that before. But I guess what I'm saying is the market is efficient on this. The only guys making real money have been really productive lately. So like I can get up here and say, I don't think Tua, relative to, the difference that a Jamar Chase makes at $40 million APY to the a different receiver, that gap is bigger for Jamar Chase than Tua relative to his peers. I can make that case. Ditto for Jared Goff. Ditto for Brock Purdy. And I would say in a certain way, ditto for Jordan Love. He benefits from Matt LaFleur, no doubt. But the productivity is hard to argue with. The difference in that Miami Dolphins offense when Tua is not running it with Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill, with Mike McDaniel as the play caller, it's not even close. It's not even close to the same. Now, the Packers offense, they won some games with Malik Willis, but I think we misremember what happened in those games. I really think we do. I think that people think that like Malik Willis scored 30 points a game, and the offense was just incredible. It wasn't. They were record breaking because they had to run the ball a bunch. They couldn't throw the ball at all, or at least very little. But we also saw like when they needed to do something in the Bears game, they couldn't. The point of all of this is to say, the league is getting this right. The league is getting this right. The Packers got it right. Even the 49ers. I'm fine with it. Do I think that Brock Purdy is even close to the best quarterback in the league? No, but he is right now the most efficient. And yes, Kyle Shanahan is a reason for that. And yes, George Kittle and Christian McCaffrey and Brandon Ayuk are reasons for that. And yes, Trent Williams and that offensive line contribute to that. Well, guess what? All those guys are there. So you're paying for value. You're paying for production and you're paying for future production. So yes, could you put another quarterback in there and get similar production? Maybe you could. Yeah, you probably could. I said this about the Jalen Hurts Super Bowl. How many quarterbacks, could have quarterbacked that team to a Super Bowl? The answer to me is like 15. And that's not to say that those 15 players are better than Jalen Hurts. I'm saying you could probably take quarterbacks worse than Jalen Hurts. A guy like Kyler Murray, for example, I think he's probably not as good as Jalen Hurts. They might have been able to win the Super Bowl with Kyler Murray. So now I don't think the list is of like guys who are worse is way longer that could win the Super Bowl. But I also think basically all the guys we mentioned are better than Jalen Hurts. It's the normal guys that we think about, the Herberts, Burrows, Mahomes, Allens, Jacksons for sure. Then you start getting into, having some conversations. I think Jordan Love is better than Jalen Hurts. It also doesn't matter because Jalen Hurts is producing and Jordan Love is producing, and they're producing in really a commensurate way. Now, the fact that Jordan Love has produced more efficiently, despite not having the weapons or the offensive line that Jalen Hurts does, speaks to Jordan Love's ability. And all you have to do, there's been these cut-ups going around. I tweeted some of them out of all the like 20-plus yard throws. And you watch Brock Purdy's and you go, hey man, there's some nice throws on there. He can throw the ball. He's a good quarterback. Brock Purdy is a better quarterback, and last year proved Brock Purdy is a better quarterback than I even was ready to give him credit for after year one. I was ready to go, it's all the supporting cast, and it's not. It's more than that. But you watch him make all the air yard throws of 20 yards from a clean pocket or with no pressure, and then you watch Jordan Love do it, and you go, that's the difference. That's the difference. When you're paying for production and that's all you're paying for, when you pay Jordan Love, you're paying for the production, the efficiency, and the upside, the ability to get better, to be more than just, hey, I'm pushing the buttons in this offense. And Brock Purdy can do that too. He can extend plays. He makes plays with his feet. It's one of the big differentiators with Jimmy Garoppolo. He's got access to parts of the field that Jimmy Garoppolo didn't really. But it also doesn't matter. Because if you're producing, like Brock Purdy, he took a team to an NFC Championship game that they probably would have won. And then a Super Bowl. Like, that's a good thing. You'd like to go to a Super Bowl, right? You'd like your team to go there? Okay. Is he the driver of that production? No. But is the certainty of that production at the level that production is at really, really, really freaking valuable? Yes, it is. And that's why he got paid. So I'm not here to make fun of that contract. I don't think it's make funnable. I'm not here to make fun of Jared Goff or Tua Tagovailoa on that contract. It's the same reasons. You can't make fun of the Jordan Love deal. He produces at an elite level, above, in fact, the level of other players making just as much money or something close to just as much money, who are generally considered to be better. Jordan Love has outproduced those players. The contract at this point is irrelevant. Now, all of that is bringing us to this moment where you look at the end of the Packers' schedule. They are going to need to run the ball. We'll talk about why next on Locked On Packers. Say goodbye to sticky notes, scribbled plans on the fridge, and overlapping calendar invites. The Skylight Calendar is here to bring clarity to the chaos and help families stay organized without the stress. The sleek digital display syncs with your existing calendars, Google, Apple, Outlook, and more, making it simple to track appointments, practices, dinners, and reminders all in one place. Could assigning everyone in your house their own color finally solve the who does what confusion? We do it. We have it. Works great. Do I have to remember everyone's colors? Yes, but I mostly have to remember mine. And then, generally from context. I don't need anything more than that. There's also only 4 in our house. So it's not rocket science, but guess what? It's useful for me to look at the calendar and go, what do I have to do with my son? What is my wife's schedule on this day? I know right where my eye has to go. Very convenient. Right now, Skylight is offering our listeners $30 off their 15-inch calendars by going to skylightcal.com/NFL. Go to skylightcal.com/NFL for $30 off your 15-inch calendar. That is skylightcal.com/NFL. Have you looked lately at the Packers schedule? I know we talked about this last week. I was trying to find, we talked about the end of the schedule. And I wrote last week about trying to avoid scuffling into the playoffs the same way that they did in 2024. And what I realized was all 4 of their December games are cold weather games. They play home for Chicago. They go to Denver. They go to Chicago, home for Baltimore. That's it. Not only is that a tough stretch, it's a cold stretch. 4 consecutive outdoor cold weather games. It's actually more than that. That was going to be my hook here, okay? But then I started looking into it a little bit more. It actually starts sooner than that. Starting November 10th, okay? Philadelphia Eagles, that's Monday night. You don't think at 7:30, 8 o'clock at night in Green Bay, it's going to be freaking cold? November 10th. Like there's frost on November 10th. Most years. From that stretch, 7 of the next 8 games are outside in cold weather cities. You got to go to New York, home games in Green Bay, and then the stretch I mentioned at Philly at Denver, at Chicago. You finish the year with the Vikings, who don't play outside, mercifully. have to be able to run the ball. And this was one of the best running teams in the NFL last year, third in rush offense DVOA. But your defense has to be keeping you in situations where you can run the football. What happened too often in some games last year is it's not just that the Packers didn't offensively handle the elements particularly well. Remember that rain game against the Lions where they dropped, 6, 8 third downs, red zone opportunities. Savion Williams dropped a touchdown, multiple third down drops. Just killer drops in the rain. The Packers offense did not handle the elements well. You have to be able to run the ball and you have to be able to create explosive plays. And this is something that we've talked a little bit about with Marshawn Lloyd. He is someone who can create explosive plays. I went back and checked. Pro Football Focus has this thing that they call elusive rating. And it's kind of a weird formula, and it's on a scale that no one quite understands. But it basically combines how often are you forcing missed tackles and how much are you creating after you are contacted. Remember, Marshawn Lloyd's only a 210-pound guy. And Marshawn Lloyd in his final year at USC was third in the nation in Pro Football Focus's elusive rating. Watch him play. And we saw it in the preseason. We saw it that one chunk run carry that was taken away by a very questionable Bo Melton hold against the Colts. He is a slasher. He is someone who can create. He can turn 4 into 14. He can turn 14 into 40. If you block a crease for him, he can hit it and be gone and then make a guy miss, and it's a house call. You need those kinds of plays because you're not going to be able to rely on Jordan Love to throw the ball 40, 50 yards down the field. It's going to be cold. It's going to be windy. It's harder to make those connections. It's hard to drive the ball deep outside the numbers. It's hard to make catches when you're Jordan Love having to drive the ball deep outside the numbers. I mentioned that 20-yard cut up that's going around. Jordan Love, I mean, there's a bunch of them that just ricochet off the hands of receivers. Now that's why Matthew Golden and Savion Williams are in town. Not that Savion Williams has the most sterling reputation when it comes to drops either, but that's the goal, is to have more players give you those opportunities. It's also, by the way, why you have someone like Savion Williams. Savion Williams can give you yak opportunities. You don't want to tackle 6'4", 220, who's got a 96th percentile speed score. You don't want to tackle that guy when it's cold. Teams in college didn't have to see him when it was cold. They're going to have to now. You want jet sweep, like running a jet sweep with Jaden Reed is one thing. Running that little push pass end around is with Jaden Reed in December. That's one thing. What about when it's 6'4", 222? When it's a big dude who runs hard is coming downhill at you. That's a little bit of a different proposition. Just spit the ball out to him quick and let a corner try and tackle him. They're not going to want to tackle him. And then, yeah, you can get vertical. Hopefully you have Christian Watson back by now. You get Matthew Golden going vertically. They've given themselves more options. You get Marshawn Lloyd in this offense. You add Savion Williams to it. More Tucker Kraft. This team has got the bodies to be a demanding cold weather team. Whether they, pull back on any of the spread offense stuff, or any of the throwing stuff, I don't know that they have to do that. They just have to change the way that it looks sometimes, when it's going to be cold, when it's going to be rainy, when it's going to be windy, when it's going to be snowy. They have the players to do that. They just have to find the right formula. And that means incorporating these rookies. It means elevating the roles of some of these guys like Tucker Kraft. And we don't know what they're going to get from Marshawn Lloyd in year 2, but they were extremely bullish on what he could be coming out as a rookie. They were ready to use Marshawn Lloyd. And then he just couldn't stay healthy. He is the key, or a key. Savion Williams is a potential key. And this defense, they played well enough against Philly to keep the run game in it. The Packers just couldn't run the ball. They couldn't do anything offensively because they couldn't block anybody. Well, they've added reinforcements to this offensive line. so that they can hopefully change that. One of the first things Anthony Belton said about when he got through the playbook is this team wants to come downhill and hit you. They want to build a team that can win in December and January. And they have matchup-proofed this offense, and they have weather-proofed this offense. Now let's see him pay that off. Speaking of Savion Williams, I want to talk more about him next on Locked On Packers. Thanks for making Locked On Packers your first listen. For your second listen, check out Locked On NFL Scouting. The NFL draft is over, but the roster moves and news never stop. Host Kyle Krabs and Joe Marino will make you the most informed NFL fan this offseason. Find Locked On NFL Scouting on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. So I was watching the underdog breakdown of Savion Williams. This was before the draft. And they renamed it and it popped up and I was like, ooh, I didn't watch that one before. And Josh Norris and Hayden Winks do a great job breaking down the prospects, statistical models, and the film and highlights and all kinds of cool stuff. But Josh Norris said something that struck me, and it made me think if maybe we are misunderstanding the potential role that Savion Williams can play in this offense. Not is going to necessarily, but can play. Because Josh suggested that to him, Savion Williams reminds Norris of Chase Claypool. And I thought, isn't that an interesting idea? Because in the 2020 draft, there were two receivers that the Packers were trying to trade up for. They did not get one of them in the first round. You may remember who they drafted instead. The receivers flew off the board. But then Peter King reported that they were trying to trade up for one of two players, and they were not able to do that before they came off the board. Interestingly, one of the other comps is to Laviska Shenault, who was also a 2020 draft receiver. But the two players I've always believed the Packers were trying to trade up for, Chase Claypool and Michael Pittman, came off the board way before the Packers would have had a chance to move up for them. And the reporting from Peter King is that they tried to trade up, those guys went off the board that they wanted, and so they decided to stand pat. And they didn't feel like anybody else in the class was a needle mover. So like Denzel Mims was never really going to be an option for them. Okay, so Chase Claypool goes out and he has this terrific rookie season, vertical threat, but a raw player, like was really a hybrid sort of tight end move, joker sort of guy at Notre Dame. Some thought, hey, this is O.J. Howard. This is a tight end. Plays receiver, boundary receiver, middle of the field, big slot, can do a lot of different things because size, speed. Doesn't quite have his head screwed on straight or his priorities in order or whatever it is, but never really able to maximize his physical gifts. And yet in 2022, Brian Gutekunst tried to trade a second round pick for Chase Claypool. Fast forward to 2025, they draft Savion Williams. And I went, what? Whoa. Chase Claypool to be in 2022, a field stretcher, a middle of the field target in a lot of the same ways that you were trying to get maybe say a Luke Musgrave to be. Well, that was 2022. They didn't have Luke Musgrave yet. So then you can't get Claypool. You go out, you get Musgrave. That hasn't worked out quite the way that you were hoping. But now you have Savion Williams, who maybe we're thinking too narrowly about his potential role in this offense. Could he be a bit of the reprisal of the Luke Musgrave power slot? the vertical elements that you could create there. A big, strong, fast receiver in the slot, get vertical, deep over routes, go routes against quarters coverage where you've got a safety having to run with Savion Williams. And now he can go up and get it over a safety. Middle of the field targets, especially against these middle field open coverages where you've got two safeties back there and, cover two. Trying to attack that linebacker. Can that linebacker get enough depth by the time that you can get into the middle of that field? Can you get it up over him? There's opportunities here to attack the middle of the field with someone like Savion Williams. And I do think we have been a little, I will speak for myself. I have been a little too narrow-minded about what his potential role in this offense could be because I am bullish on the talent. I am frustrated by the drops just like everyone else. But the good plays, my God. The physical tools, my God. And I understand the concern, the age, the lack of production. Now you look at Savion Williams' production, Jack Bech, who did have more in the offense in terms of targets, also did not have a huge target share. Same with Matthew Golden in Texas. Like you go back, you look at the last couple of years, they've just had a lot of guys. And so they spread the ball around to a lot of guys. You want your guy to have the most. Well, Savion Williams actually had the most touches. He had more touches than Jack Bech by a comfortable margin because of all the rushing attempts. So they told us, TCU did, who they thought the most dynamic player on their offense was. No, Savion Williams did not get as many targets or catches as Jack Bech, but he got more touches because they ran him out of Wildcat. They handed the ball to him, jet sweeps, reverses, screens, all sorts of stuff, passes. And he's more than that. And like the Laviska Shenault cult, I understand. If you are someone who liked Laviska Shenault, you should love Savion Williams because Savion Williams is a much better athlete, is a bigger player, so his play style in the NFL is much more likely to translate to the NFL. And I think Savion Williams can play outside precisely because he's bigger, stronger, and faster than Laviska Shenault, who is always, I think, going to have to be someone who is a manufactured touch type player. I was never as high on Laviska Shenault as others were. I liked him. I liked the element that he could bring to Green Bay's offense for sure. But some people were like over the moon on him, and that was just not me. Now, I would have said he's a better fit for the Packers offense than Laviska Shenault, than Savion Williams. And the Packers, they were right to avoid Shenault. We'll see if they are right this time to pick Williams. I wanted to throw that out there because the Claypool thing especially, I was like, I still kind of think Chase Claypool, if you play his career 10 times, this is like the worst outcome of it. And part of that was a work ethic or attitude issue. Like, I don't know if he was ever as locked in on playing the game as he needed to be. And, without knowing all the details there, I hate to cast aspersions. But it didn't seem like he was ever like there were maturity questions and, the famous celebrating of the catch and first down when they needed to be getting up on the ball and spiking it with the Steelers. Like there was some weird stuff there. And, teams still believed in him and continued to bet on the talent until it became clear that he just was not a reliable player. So Savion Williams, be a little bit more consistent, be a little bit more reliable as just a person. And if you can recreate some of that early Chase Claypool stuff, like he was a good player, man. Packers would benefit from having a player like that. All right, back tomorrow as we get you set for the mandatory camp. That's coming up. So the real work begins. And an off season of fun conversations very much to come here. Follow me on all the social medias. Well, not TikTok, but follow the podcast on TikTok. They're there. I'm not. Even if I wanted to be now, you can't download the app. I don't think so. Subscribe wherever you get podcasts. Subscribe on YouTube. Watch us if you want so you can stay locked on Packers.